Are the Giants overreacting?
I think they're overreacting. And the reason why I think that they're overreacting is because this is a guy that's one of the elite receivers in the game of football. We know what he brings to the table. And the reality of the situation is assuming that he isn't using any kind of cocaine, because that white substance that woman in the room with him was using clearly appeared to be cocaine. Assuming it's not something that egregious, then what Odell Beckham Jr. is tantamount to being just a headache. And I get tired of so many times where you look at teams and because somebody is a headache, you feel the need to get rid of them. He's an electrifying talent. Sometimes headaches come along with it. Everything can't always be peachy keen. It can't always be a bed of roses or what have you. Obviously, if you can get a couple of #1 picks for a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., that's considered incredibly valuable. So if the Cleveland Browns were willing to surrender the 1st or the 4th overall pick in the 1st round this year, along with a 1st round second year, you got to consider that. If the Indianapolis Colts were willing to do something tantamount to that, well, since they have the #6 pick now that they moved down from #3, along with a 1st round pick next year, you'd have to consider it. But for the most part, this comes down to the fact that you wouldn't even be thinking about this if you're John Mara, who was 100% committed to Odell Beckham Jr. a year ago. You wouldn't even be thinking about this if you hadn't tired of answering questions about him and his behavior. But he's never been arrested. He's never been suspended. So it's not lawlessness that we're talking about here. What we're talking about is an individual that's a headache. And I personally get tired of teams who have a hard time dealing with headaches. That's what Tylenol is for, and other medicinal devices. That's what those things are for. People are headaches sometimes, particularly when they're stars. Deal with it.
Well, I totally agree with that. Like when people talk about a GM or an owner doesn't want to deal with a certain personality. From the fans' point of view, the GM or owner can deal with that personality until that GM or owner expires. The fans do not care if that personality is attached to a top-end producer, which is what Odell Beckham Jr. is. There's no other talent like him. Yes, I'm including Julio Jones and Antonio Brown. No, I cannot put him ahead of those guys until he shows up in the playoffs as those guys have. But his peak, I'm telling you right now, is the highest peak there is at the receiver position, period. That includes everyone. He just needs that peak to show up when it matters most. Now, this comes down to the question, are the Giants really reacting appropriately, or are they overreacting? They are reacting appropriately because Stephen A., this is not about, I don't think, actually his personality. I believe this is about his injury history. You do not want to commit top dollars to a guy who may not be available. What's the best ability everyone says in football? Availability, right? And in the NFL, a hard cap league, as I brought up yesterday, as I bring up every time the subject comes up, you have to rob Peter to pay Paul. You only have X number of dollars. You have to try to make it, work for you as best it can. And what history has shown, especially recent history, is top-paid receivers. When your highest-paid guy is a receiver, you don't win the Super Bowl. In fact, the Giants have found when they had high-paid players who were skills position players, among the best at their position, Jeremy Shockey, Tiki Barber, suddenly in their absence, they won a Super Bowl. It doesn't mean the Giants are better without Odell, because when Plaxico Burress literally shot himself in the foot and shot the team's chances in the foot, the Giants did not repeat as Super Bowl champs, and they had a very good chance too. So Odell helps you win, just him on the field or him off the field. If it's just about that, you have Odell, you have a much, much better chance to win. That goes for everyone. But it's not just about that. It's if Odell's on the field, who else is not on the field because you had to pay Odell. So I think all the personality stuff is an excuse for the Giants not to pay him. I think they're worried about committing tons of dollars to a guy in a hard cap league who has an injury history. From Odell's point of view, he's like, yeah, I have an injury history, and this is a hurt business. I want my guaranteed dollars. And Stephen A., the reason I say the Giants aren't overreacting is because his threat is credible. Usually when a guy says he'll sit out a season, you can roll your eyes. But consider Odell's age. Consider the fact that he has millions coming in off the field in endorsements. He could actually sit out a season and then get paid. So the Giants have to deal with that realistic threat, and that coincides with the fact that they don't want to commit the dollars, I don't think, to him. I think that they're not overreacting, that they're looking at their options and thinking, if this dude is saying either make me the highest paid guy, which he deserves to be, by the way, given his age and ability, or deal me, they're like, okay, let's deal him when we can get the most for him.